to what is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Jenks City Council. Today is Tuesday, March 7th of 2023. It is 6:02 p.m. We're going to call our meeting to order, and we are welcoming Ms. Tara Kilpatrick tonight. She is sitting in for our city clerk, Mr. Brandon Macy. So, Mrs. Kilpatrick, could you please verify our attendance?
Ojay, here. Lynn. Isbell. Murray.
Here.
Klein. Short.
Here.
Box.
Here. So let the record reflect we do have a minimum of a quorum, so we will be conducting business for the city of Jenks this evening. We're going to start off with an invocation, and we're going to welcome back Pastor Tommy Davis. Pastor, if you come forward, you get another opportunity to tell us about your church, for those of you that don't know, and then you can lead us to the Lord in prayer, my friend. Thank you, sir.
Good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. I'm so grateful to Mailbox and to all of you, our city leaders, city council, to all of you that are represented here today. I'm so grateful for another opportunity to be here today. My church is New Direction International. We started here in the city of Jenks in November of 2022. So we are relatively a new church here in the area, but we are in love with the city of Jenks, love being in this area, and love partnering with the city of Jenks for the good of our community. We are about community here at our church, and so we are always striving to do something within the context of community so that we can be a blessing to people within our community. And it is so grateful. We are so grateful to be connected to Mailbox, to all of you, our city leaders, city council, to all of you that are leaders and community members of this community that we like to call Jenks. And so it is a privilege for us to be here. Our website is nditulsa.com, and you are welcome to go to that website to find more information about us. We are still in my home currently, physically worshiping there, but we do live stream on Reverend Tommy R. Davis. That is myself. That is my Facebook page. We do have a page, New Direction International, as well, and so you can find great content about our church on either of those Facebook accounts. Again, my website is nditulsa.com. Please go to that website and find a lot of information about us. We are thoroughly looking for a physical location so that we can worship within our community. So we are looking for that continually and just believing God for that so that we can move beyond the home and be out in the community and worship together there. I am so grateful to you, Mailbox, and to all of you, our city leaders, and to all of you present for this wonderful opportunity to share on tonight. Let us pray. Father God, we thank you for this meeting. Thank you for all of those that are present. Thank you for our city. And God, we just thank you for the blessings that you've bestowed upon the city of Jenks. Thank you for our city leaders. Thank you for Mailbox. Thank you for the city council. Thank you for every leader that is in this city. Thank you for those that are here tonight. We pray blessings upon this meeting. We pray blessings, oh God, upon our city. And God, we just pray that you continue to bless this city in a unique way. Enable Jenks, oh God, to continue to be a light that shines, to continue to be a blessing to those that are within this community, that those that call Jenks home, and those that visit this community as well. We pray, oh God, blessings again on this meeting. Let it be all that you would have it to be tonight. We pray, oh God, in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you so much.
Is the captain of the swim team here tonight?
Yes.
Would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Oh, okay.
The United States House of Representatives, they voted last week to bring veterans and people in the community to come forward and lead them in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mm-hmm.
We're quite a bit far away from D.C., but we'll at least start with the captain.
Okay, I know it, okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes. See you in a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to be underway tonight with a proclamation, and as you guys can tell, if you've turned around, we have a group of visitors with us from the Jenks swim team. So we're going to make this next couple of minutes all about them. So without further ado, I guess I should have had you stay. But, you know, it wouldn't be fun to do that. So if you could bring your team and find your coach and come up and join us for a minute, it'd be great. All right, Captain, you can take the mic again. We can either embarrass you or the coach, but you know what?
That's okay.
We're equal opportunity here. So, well, we got a lot of them. So before we get into the business of honoring you guys tonight, or you ladies, excuse me, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your season. Coach, you're welcome to jump in if you can do that as well. Tell us about your season, tell us about your results, and let us know what anybody would need to know about your swim team. Go ahead, Captain. You're good.
All right. So this past year was really close. We won by half a point because one of our girls tied with another team. So that was very exciting, very emotional. It's been an honor being captain and just being able to like jump in at the end of winning with the girls. And these are like the hardest workers ever. And it's been so cool training with them. And we have really good coaches. And that's all.
Or did the team elect you captain, or does the coach determine who the captain is?
The team like votes, and then the coach has a final decision.
Very good. Where's the seniors at? Who's the senior this year?
We only have 3, but
Okay. Are you, any of you guys swimming in your future endeavors? No? Is that, no? Okay. So the rest of you, we can expect to keep you around for a couple of years? All right. You guys feeling pretty good about next year? What do you think, Coach?
yes.
Feeling good about it?
Oh, we're going to win.
Gonna win? Okay. Half a point, huh?
No, it's going to be more than that.
Okay, all right, we hope so. We don't like razor-thin margins around here. Well, congratulations to you all. We love doing things like this. You guys are really, we hope you stick around and stay in Jenks, get educated, come back. You guys could take over for us. We'd love to know who the future generation of our leaders are. So congratulations on your success. I'm going to read this out loud, and then the Vice Mayor and I will join you. We'll somehow figure out how to get us into a small huddle so we can take a picture, and then we'll let you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. So, without further ado, the City of Jenks, Oklahoma proclamation is Jenks Swim Day. Sorry. Whereas the Jenks Swim teams have combined for a total of 35 state championships, and the Jenks girls team has won 14 state championships, and the boys team has won 21 state championships, more than any other sport at Jenks. And in 2023, the girls team won the state championship title, their 3rd in 5 years, and in 2023, the boys were runner-up. And in 2023, Marissa Williams won her 2 individual races at the state championships in the 100-yard butterfly and the 200 individual medley. And now, therefore, I, Corey Box, Mayor of the City of Jenks, do hereby proclaim March 8th, 2023 in the City of Jenks as Jenks Swim Day. Congratulations, ladies. So who's Marissa Williams? So you got your name. You're the only one who got named here. So you kicked it. You killed it. So do all of you compete in every event, or are you guys all specialized?
Specialized.
Okay. Who does the breaststroke? Because that's absolutely crazy. Why anybody want to do that?
Oh, I think you're thinking butterfly.
Oh, is that butterfly? Yeah, his son was a swimmer. Yeah, that absolutely makes no sense to me why anybody want to do that and call that fun. Okay. Cool. All right, let's go get some pictures and we'll be done. Thanks. Yeah, no, that's fine. You guys all want to join in since there's only 4 of us?
Do you want to just do it quickly in the lobby for that picture?
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Rely on your expertise. And
I didn't stumble over anybody's name, and now I just have 3 lists to say. Which means we cannot vote on the emergency clauses, correct? Okay.
And that's all we wanted is, I don't know if that's happening. It's a long shot right now, because we only got 2 weeks. I mean, I don't, but give it a shot, please, and do an exercise. What have you. We're trying to do the heavy lifting. And, but knowing that he was okay with it. He called me about it, so, thanks.
Okay, thank you all very much. Appreciate your patience. We're moving on to our animal welfare spotlight. And we are going to welcome back Mr. Fred Reed from Jenks Animal Control. How you doing tonight, sir? What do you got for us?
Good evening. Tonight I've got Harley. Harley is a 10 or 11 week old puppy. She is a pit bull mix, and she is full of energy, as if you couldn't tell back there. She's going to the vet this week to get started on her shots, and will get spayed when she's old enough. But she loves to play with the other dogs, even some of them quite a bit bigger than her. She doesn't mind. She is a puppy, so you've got to keep that in mind. Don't expect her to be all perfectly trained, but she is looking for a home. So if anybody left, they were all in love with her. But if anybody out there watching would like to meet Harley, they can call us at the police department at 918-299-6311 or email us at animalcontrol@jenksok.org. She was just brought to us as a single. Yeah.
Is she going to shed?
Well, yeah.
It looks like real smooth. She's going to just be just like that, but bigger?
Yeah, she won't get huge, but she will be strong. So,
Yeah, cute.
yeah.
There you go.
And she's got puppy teeth.
There you go. All right. Thank you, Mr. Reed. Appreciate you, sir. All right. Okay, we are at the portion of our meeting called Citizens' Comments, or public comments, if you will. At this particular point, if anyone would like to come forward and address the council on any topic that you have that is not on tonight's agenda, you are welcome to do so. Ms. Montgomery, is it cold in here?
No, a little bit.
Okay. Is that a fur? You packed it all tonight, huh? Okay. All right, very well. Okay, last call. Vegan fur, very well. Last call for citizens' comments. All right, the floor is closed. We're moving on to tonight's business. Item number 1 is our consent agenda. Would anyone on the council like to motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
I move to approve.
Second. Thank you. We have a proper motion and a second on item 1. Let's vote, please.
O'Shea?
Yes.
Murray?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Fox?
Yes. Item 2 we will pull. Item 3 is potential executive session for purposes of conferring on matters pertaining to economic development, including the transfer of property or the creation of a proposal to entice businesses to locate within the city of Jenks where the public disclosure of the matter discussed would interfere with the development of products or services or would violate the confidentiality of the business. We need a motion to enter executive session.
Motion to enter executive session.
Second.
Thank you all very much. We have a proper motion and second. Let's vote, please.
O'Shea?
Yes.
Murray?
Yes.
Short?
Yes.
Fox?
Yes, and for those of you that don't know what that is, we will return. We're going to head upstairs for a larger conference room, and we will be back without any delay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. The council has returned from executive session at 6:45 PM. We are moving on to item number 4, ordinance number 1609 related to Jenks zoning 23, PUD 98, MA2, allowing for a building height of 130 feet and a hospital use, repealing all ordinances or parts thereof in conflict herewith, providing for severability and declaring an emergency. We are on page 71 in your packet if you'd like to follow along, and we are welcoming Mrs. Hilton this evening. Good evening, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. This item is JZ 23, PUD 98, and it's the second amendment that we've done on PUD 98. And this is located at the 2900 West Main Development. It's 237 South Franklin Street is the general area. Some of you are familiar with this in that there is a Casey's there at the corner, and then we have some vacant property kind of towards the back. The applicant is looking to amend a series of blocks. Let me see here. The client is under contract to purchase lots 5 through 9, in addition to 14, 15, and 17 of Block 1 for a surgical hospital. And the request before you tonight has been recommended by staff and Planning Commission for approval, and that is to amend the language in the planned unit development, which currently says that we would allow in that planned unit development 6 stories or 70 feet, and the amendment would say we would allow up to 130 feet with no specified stories, and it would also allow for a hospital use. A hospital use requires a specific use permit in our code, but because this is already within a PUD and because it's the exact same notification process, we just made a major amendment to the PUD. That was the recommendation. And are we flipping to the slides? Is anyone? Okay. Well, if you were, you could look on page 75 of your packet. And then on page 76, it kind of shows the development area that we're talking about. 2 lots are completely adjacent to Main Street. 4 of them are adjacent to Franklin. Oh, sorry, not Franklin, Adams. And then 2 lots are behind there. So with that being said, I don't have any other comments. It does not amend anything else in the PUD. The other standards remain in place. So staff and Planning Commission do recommend approval.
Thank you, Mrs. Hilton. Any questions, Mayor Roger? Gentlemen? Mr. Short?
Would this be our tallest structure in the city?
Yes. Well, if it's that tall. I don't know how tall it would actually be built, but it would be that
What
tall.
Yeah, the fire department, everybody knows. Yeah. I don't think we can get a ladder up there, but I'm sure it's all been discussed. That's where you're going. Okay. Mr. Murray, any questions? No? No question? No, I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mrs. Hilton. If there's no further questions from anyone on council as it relates to JZ 23 PUD 98, item number 4, we can entertain a motion, please.
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
What?
Public comment? Yeah.
Oh, we have not done it.
We can open the floor to public comment if anyone wants to speak on behalf of this item number 4, hospital use, west side. I don't see anybody reaching further. You leaned forward in your chair, so I thought maybe you were getting ready to make the walk. No? Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll close the floor to public comment. We have a previously made motion, a second. Let's vote, please.
Ojo,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
Fox.
Yes, thank you. Item 5 is the emergency clause for ordinance number 1609. Yeah, we can pull that because we don't have enough of majority tonight. We are on to item number 6, ordinance number 1608, related to Jenks zoning 23, PUD 138, allowing for a drive-through coffee shop, repealing all ordinances and parts thereof in conflict herewith, et cetera, et cetera. The general location being Aquarium Drive and Riverfront Drive. We're on page 95 if you'd like to follow along, and we welcome back Mrs. Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. This, with your permission, I'd like to do one staff report, which would cover items 6, 7, and 8, including the plat, because they are directly related.
Very well.
Thank you. This project is the property that you see when you're coming across the bridge going west, and it would be immediately to the north. It's adjacent to Main Street, 9th Street, and B Street. It's kind of it looks like a baseball diamond, kind of. And it's kind of sits there with a little bit of a kind of a low piece of land. And the land's been there for a long time and has yet to be developed. It is the zoning for it is Riverfront Tourist Commercial. The applicant is asking for a couple of deviations from the code in order to get a drive-through coffee shop on that site. And the drive-through portion is allowed by right, but there is a couple of items that they're wanting to address. Excuse me. So the request is approval of PUD 138, and we'll also be asking for approval of the final plat. So I'm going to talk about the plat for just a second, and then we'll get into the PUD. I believe the plat is item number 8. When I bring plats to you, they are generally on the consent agenda because they are, I always call them kind of a nuts and bolts item. So we have standards established in state statute that I look at and that Mr. Cloyd, the city engineer, looks at. And then there are also our subdivision regulations. So essentially, if you bring me a plat and it meets those standards, I'm going to give you approval of that plat. And in this case, the plat does meet the standards for that. They've actually kind of cleared up some things that were issues. There was a levee easement that Mr. Betchen worked to find, and we're very grateful for that. And so that's now identified and known as part of the plat, and then the build line was removed because previously it was zoned something different. So those came off of the plat, and then in addition to that, the access, there was always access allowed along 9th Street, and the applicant has pushed that a little bit further north to get it away from the bridge. And then there was always access on B Street, and that has been narrowed down so that there's not so much choice. Oh, look, that's on the board. I didn't know we were going through them. So the biggest thing about this site is it has what we call a lot of encumbrances. It has storm sewer running across it. It has other things. You can see all of the lines. There's kind of a Y. So the actual buildable area is very, very limited. Doesn't mean, and when I say buildable, I'm talking about structure, building. You can use some of that. Some of those easements can be covered with parking or sidewalks and things like that, but you couldn't put a structure necessarily. It would take a lot of planning, a lot of money. So that being said, staff and technical advisory committee and planning commission do recommend approval of the plat, regardless of any decisions made on the planned unit development. So now, if you don't mind, I'll go back to the PUD. Currently, let's see here. The comprehensive plan is regional, commercial, and riverfront subarea plan. And the plat is, as we just said, being amended and brought before you tonight. And it is surrounded by other similar zonings. On page 98 of the packet, it does show that buildable area in red. And then at the bottom, it kind of shows you a Google Street View of that intersection. If you look on page 99, there's an overlay with the proposed site plan for the layout of the coffee shop. So the PUD request and final plat have been reviewed by Planning Commission, TAC, and staff. The plat has a couple of comments. I believe all of them have been addressed, and if not, they will be addressed. I have no problems with that. If you look on page 100, it shows the bulk and area standards for the RTC district, that riverfront tourist commercial. And in this case, because of the site has street frontage on 3 sides, they would need relief on one of those sides. So they have on the exterior side maximum, the RTC allows for 60, but they're going to need 70 feet. So that would be an exception to the code. Then all of the table, so the table below that is table 16-34, and these are uses that are allowed by right. So the PUD is saying that we're planning to build a coffee shop, and this is where I always try to be very clear, because there's always can be a little bit of confusion moving forward when suddenly something doesn't get built and something else does. So tonight we're talking about a coffee shop use at this site with a site plan in front of you. But if for some reason that didn't happen, all of these other uses are approved and part of that PUD. So maybe between now and next month, Seven Brew decides not to do coffee shops and they decide to do home decor, then it would be allowed, because it's allowed by right and it's allowed in the PUD. That makes sense. If you look on page 103, that's the actual planned unit development before you. And on page 105, it says one of the exceptions that they're asking for is the use of metal panels. In the RTC and in our downtown, we don't allow for metal panels, except in the downtown you could have an awning that was made out of metal, but the actual facade materials would not be allowed. And I have seen a couple of these coffee shops. They look like coffee shops that are very trendy right now. So that's one of the exceptions they are asking for. The other one is that setback requirement, and then a third one is to allow for lighting around the roof line of the building. So the UDO states that you can have that if approved by Planning Commission, and at this time that has been approved by Planning Commission, but that is part of the PUD request. So the applicant, when the plat came through, the Planning Commission looked at it, and there was a sample of the site plan. They had some concerns about traffic. They asked that a traffic impact analysis be submitted. That information was conveyed to the applicant, and they brought back, so when the PUD came the following month, the applicant brought information directly from Seven Brew that gave some site assessment. At this time, a traffic impact analysis has not specifically been done in this area. Part of the complication of that is what outcomes would the city want to see, what does that look like, etc. So with that being said, the application was approved. The plat was recommended to you by Planning Commission to approve, as submitted with, of course, the conditions being finalized, and then the PUD was approved and recommended, I should say, for approval with no right turn coming out of 9th Street. So you can make a right in, but you couldn't make any turn out of 9th. It's right in only. So that is it.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Hilton. Any questions for Mrs. Hilton, Donna?
I am just wondering why the traffic analysis wasn't completed.
So the city code has criteria for traffic impact analysis, and it's related. What's that?
As related to subdivisions.
Yeah, as related to subdivisions or intensifying the use of a piece of property. And that says that the city engineer is to review the peak number of cars that would be using a new intersection or an intersection The information we got from Seven Brew was that the peak number of cars is 70 cars per hour. And the code states that anything less than 150 would not require a traffic impact analysis. And so staff and the city engineer used that to make the recommendation on whether or not the engineer would require that. And at that time, we did not require it. So that's the criteria that we have to go on, and that's kind of where we are. I guess the fact that the council and staff amended or redid the comprehensive plan and allowed a drive-through use by right on this property, you know, if this was not a PUD, then a drive-through could go in by right with nothing. And so I think our thought was that if staff and council made this change to the comp plan at that time, that it seemed like we had already somewhat made a decision on if we thought a drive-through was appropriate at this location or not.
Thank you, Mr. Stroud. Any other questions, Donna?
Well, I mean, there's 30,000 people that come across that bridge that goes into Jenks right down that street. And I'm just a little concerned. I kind of think I don't know if you guys agree, but I think we need one.
Okay, table that.
Excuse me.
Mr. Short, comments, concerns, questions?
Well, I have the same concerns that Councilor OJ has as well. I mean, it's a you mentioned a 3-street sided lot is a unique factor to this. So that kind of, to me, is a little bit unique. I mean, I was there at 4 o'clock when school was letting out and had a lot of time to ponder coming westbound. So it seems to me this is a little bit of a unique piece of property given the 3-sided street sides, and how those all converge into basically 5. I mean, there's 5 streets right there that all converge into one location, so it might not be a bad idea for us to kind of analyze that overall, see if there's anything we could contemplate differently at that time. The only other question I had is on the architectural requirements on the accepting the metal panels. I've had quite a bit of feedback from our citizens about aluminum siding and the metal buildings that are being built in Jenks. And I'm not sure I'm excited about having another one. It is the gateway to our city, and have another aluminum sided or metal sided building, you know, just doesn't appeal to me at all. And from the citizens that I've been talking to, doesn't appeal to them at all either. So I think we needed to really consider that exception. And frankly, I would like to not allow it.
And we can,
In the planning commission meeting, which I watched, there are some 7 brews that are attractive and some that really aren't. And I think, I don't remember who made the comment, but you know, given that this is, I don't know if we're calling this the gateway, but this is one of the first impressions people see other than the tall bank. But yeah, I agree with you that we'll make it clear to the applicant that we're looking for the better version of the one they have, not the one that's in Rogers or anywhere else. So, Mr. Murray, anything? Okay. Can you refresh our memory? What was the Planning Commission's thoughts on the appearance, the metal panels and all that? I seem to think they spent a couple minutes talking about that.
The applicant has added additional landscaping, and I believe, and you can ask the applicant, they are present to answer questions.
Yeah.
I believe that the metal panels may be directly related to the canopies. So I believe the structure is masonry type materials and then the canopy itself. I would have to get clarification from Mr. Betchen on that. I'm not positive, but I think that is the case.
Okay. Well, we can
I don't think it's on the building itself, but.
We can even pull it up if we need to, get a little clarification. We just want to get this one right, so. Nothing else? All right, you know, I would agree the council's got a pretty significant appetite for a traffic study. We don't often disagree with the Planning Commission or our engineering folks, but I watched the meeting, the traffic analysis that they did in Rogers, and the thought that there's 70 cars here. We're planning for far more success than that. we're planning for more than 150. And we're not gonna roll the dice and take the chance, because we already think there's gonna be, we know already that we're going to grow, and that's gonna be great for everybody, but we also know we're gonna have a traffic problem. So we, as a group, wanna make sure that going forward, when it's needed and appropriate, and carefully thought about, that we get that done. I would suggest, my guess is we're gonna approve this project with a traffic analysis that comes back, that's counts morning and an AM and a PM count on 2 different days, a weekday and a weekend, while school's in session. What else? Weekday and a weekend while school's in session, in the morning and the afternoon. Anything else? What am I missing? Yeah. And frankly, if that can get done and Mr. Cloyd and Mr. Carr agree after that's done that they're still satisfied, then we will take your suggestion that it's okay. We're not, but if we're gonna go from bad to critical, then we'd like to know about it as far as relates to traffic. And I don't think 70 is a number that we're willing to accept. So,
Ms. Hilton, how would, those are fine times today and historically looking backwards, but given the amount of pedestrian and car traffic we're forcing into downtown, I mean, that's the intent of everyone. There's gonna be more, so do the traffic studies, can they project out?
They can.
Okay. Then I think that more importantly than looking backwards is looking forwards and seeing how, you know, is this the time, you know, what is the impact of all of it together?
yeah.
Would be very helpful.
And I think he knows that we're gonna have traffic. It's a lot of traffic stuff to deal with, a number of hours and hours of conversations, and how to funnel people in and out of what is, I think we all know it's gonna be the place everybody's gonna wanna be in a couple of years, is somewhere near that aquarium. So we've gotta figure that out, but we will give you a pass, and we will allow Mr. Betchen to come forward, unless you have anything else you wanna share with us. No? Thank you. All right, thank you, Mrs. Hilton. Good evening, sir. I think you know the drill, my friend.
Yes, sir.
So you're working Gateway, and you're on the east and the west,
Yeah,
huh?
that's.
You got anything going on in the middle?
Racket it, that's what we do. Alan Betchen, AAB Engineering, we're the engineers and surveyors for this project. Let's take the easy one first, which is the metal panel. If you look on, and many of you have probably seen pictures, the column post on the canopy are metal wrapped. That blue wrapping is actually a metal, so it doesn't technically meet the code, but the dominant exterior is masonry, EFS. So it's an accent piece. It's not. This isn't a metal building. This isn't a storage container. That's not what's proposed.
Perfect.
Most of what's in the PUD that's before the council is really relative to special things about the site. In the river overlay district, there's not just a building setback, which is what you normally see. There's also a build to line. So there's a minimum and maximum, which is trying to create that streetscape. On this particular piece, that's not viable because of the adjoining easements. Physically, you can't build within that proximity because of adjoining easements. So that's a lot of what our requests are in the PUD. There is a code requirement that you can't have a drive-through facing the street. When you're abutted on 3 sides by a street, that's a pretty insurmountable requirement for us, which is why we requested relief from that in the PUD. The traffic impact analysis, I want to be very clear with the council. It's never been our intent to try to sidestep or not prepare or present anything that has been asked of us. It's trying to give the data and then set the boundaries of what the requirements of a traffic impact analysis is going to be for the project. It's almost become a buzzword of, we want to see a traffic impact analysis for this, but there's not a rigid definition of what that is for a site. It's what are we analyzing? Is it this intersection? What's the scope and what's the limits of that analysis? There's a pretty extensive scoping process that goes through that, and as staff we certainly, not just us, but the city engineer had reached out to the same traffic consultant, because there has been an analysis at that intersection, I think is a pretty fair statement. It has been analyzed already, that's already been recognized as an issue within the city. As we were trying to define that scope, it became one of the, hey, we know there's an issue here, and the scope is really outside of what your particular use is, and if we can show that you're not queuing outside your location onto the roadway, then it's not drastically changing the peak hour times. And functionally, the peak hours for this use are AM peaks, so 7 o'clock, which is not the 4 o'clock time that's the problem intersection time. I'm not saying that it doesn't affect it, but I am saying that as you start to think through the logistics of what the limits of that are, that's where you get the recommendation back from staff of, hey, we don't meet the thresholds, and honestly, it's a bigger concept of what are we looking at and what the macro analysis needs to be. If it's the will of the council, our client is willing to do a traffic impact analysis and bring that back to staff. There is some concept of, we got to define what we're analyzing.
How do you feel
expectation.
about my project scope I gave earlier?
It really becomes a question of,
Because I listened to the way you guys did it in Rogers, and I don't need to have an engineering degree to figure out that was as simple as it gets. Somebody stared at a store for an hour.
So that's not actually,
Okay.
that analysis was just, hey, this is the trip generating for Q.
Yeah.
So, okay, here, really, this is gonna be a really, prepare for a dorky conversation and super engineering statements coming. The way that, whenever we prepare an analysis, it's one of them is looking at what is the traffic generated from the physical site. And then it's saying, what is the impact of that traffic on the adjoining facilities, right? The Institute of Traffic Engineers has published studies of different uses. There's, I really don't know, at least 1,000, because this is use 978. Different uses, and they're pretty specific whenever you get to higher traffic generators. So for coffee shops, there's coffee shop that does not have indoor seating, coffee shops with a drive-through, coffee shops without a drive-through and without indoor seating. And they actually have analysis of data points that they've plotted from studies nationwide that say this is how many trips were generated on average. They then do an analysis to best fit that, and then they come back and say, okay, well, this is the likely trips generated by that site. ITE would tell you that there would be 100 trips generated if we took the averages for this use on that site. I actually pulled the numbers this afternoon just to make sure of what those were. What you have that came back from Seven Brew was really they're operationally saying, we went and done a little bit of looking, and this is what we've seen on our sites. I'm not standing here as an engineer telling you, hey, that's representative of how this is going to work, or that these sites are apples to apples comparisons, but I am telling you it's not far off from what ITE is going to tell you and what a traffic engineer is going to use as the standard for trip generations for this particular use. That hourly trip generation, even if we scale it up to 100, with their service ratings, which really that letter was, the way that I took it and what it was trying to convey was more not about the number of trips, but more it was a discussion of, hey, we're getting them out, and here's the queuing length that we anticipate to actually be stacked up. Because the question is are we going to back them out onto the street? Because that's where the real impact comes from. And even at 100, there's 24 stacking, and so if they didn't serve any of them, if they turned over the lot in 15 minutes, which is what they were showing in that, they would have moved everybody out and had the full ITE stacking as well. That's not to say that it could be wildly successful and the numbers are different, because remember, this is an analysis that's a range. So some stores did less, even from ITE, and some of them did better. The question is with those numbers, Then you run it through what are the impacts of those people trying to get into the site and out of the site on the adjoining intersections. And that's where the traffic impact analysis comes in. Those standards, we just need to know if it is the will of the council, what do you want to, are you wanting both of those intersections studied? And then from Seven Brew standpoint, if we have a level of service at the intersection that's functioning at D, if we still show a level of service of D, the expectation, I think, from them would be, okay, then we didn't make it any worse than it is. I'm not responsible for making it better than, because there's a bigger problem that's already sitting in front of you. We have talked about it a lot, and I don't think the intent, I can tell you the intent from the developer is not to sidestep that. It's just to say, tell me what it is, and then know that we have an end in sight that we can go, hey, I hit this hurdle and I'm done. And that there's a metric that we're measured against. I think that that's a fair request, and ultimately we kind of have to have that in order to be able to tell the engineer what to prepare. I think we have a pretty clear idea of analyze both of the intersections and run them back through, because I think that's kind of where staff had originally looked at, even in their analysis. And I say outside of the Seven Brew development. And we're happy to prepare that and bring that back to staff as a condition of the permit, but I would ask that it not come back. Don't delay the PUD approval and the zoning entitlement. Let that go through, because we have another step to go through with the Corps, because we're close to the levee, and I need to walk down that process, and this is kind of the step in that process.
Yeah.
Would be the ask.
We understand, and believe me, we want this project to succeed. This is a better use than some of the others that we've heard, but I would disagree. I think this is going to be like a Dutch Brothers. I'm looking at the menu. I don't see anything about this that says 7 to 8 a.m. I see things on here that kids drink all day.
Oh,
I think this is going to be successful, which is great for Jenks. We're the first one in Oklahoma, right?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, never mind. I thought we were the first. This whole conversation's been a waste of our time. Okay, so we're the second.
Unrealistic standards. That's what we get compared
Third?
against.
How many of these things are there? Okay, all right. First in Tulsa County?
No.
Oh, good Lord. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to quit asking questions.
Yeah, no.
Regardless, so what you need from us, you're asking us, the four of us, to give you two intersections you want us to focus on?
No, what I would say is, if you direct that we prepare a traffic impact analysis, that we would say that it be that we be allowed to work with staff to develop what the scope of that's going to be, and that if we're not showing a significant degradation of the intersection, I mean, which is really the intersection to the southwest, that's the metric that we're being judged against.
Yeah, it's a very reasonable request. Yeah, we want to be reasonable about it, I think. Okay, one other question. How are we going to control and describe for us, because we think we have the answer, how are you going to control people from turning to the south or turning left when they come out of the 9th Street egress? Is it that concrete thing that nobody wants to run over?
We can look at doing those.
Okay.
This personal opinion, and I've done a couple of them in Jenks, and they didn't work really well. I did the one at Quick Trip. Those pork chops, super not engineered term, but those channelizing medians are not crazy effective at that. They end up being, in my opinion, more of an obstruction than they are like the traffic getting in and out. Signing it, and then if it's really an issue, I mean, the idea is to prevent people turning and clogging up the traffic. If it's signed, that's the whole point of that second access. It's going to be the natural tendency for people to exit to the north and then go through the intersection if they're trying to make a left back down toward it. So I would tell you that signing it and then that just being the natural flow will probably be as effective as anything else that's done there. But if it was the request of council that we wanted to do some kind of structural, we can put a center turn median in like that on site, those pork chops.
Well, our concern is that Well, I'm guessing that the demographic of who's gonna be here, I don't think they give a crap about your no left turn sign. You're not solving our problem. We're gonna take the blame for this, because we're trusting people to do the right thing. So the best example is what is the Quick Trip on Elm, is that?
We did one on the north,
Yeah.
on the north drive as a ride-in, ride-out.
And that's so you kind of, that concrete's there, so it kind of forces you to kind of
It
point your.
forces you to
Yeah.
start the movement. Those on Quick Trip, because they have larger vehicles entering and it's kind of designed for a different speed rating. That was the big concern on Elm, was trying to slow someone down to get them in it without hitting it. So it's probably, we can probably make it a little more defined here than we did at Quick Trip. But that's something along those lines we can put in to control that.
Chief, you can answer from your seat, but do we have accidents of people trying to go over that thing, or is it a safety issue? Okay, thank you. So, council members, do you guys want to add some kind of obstruction other than a please don't turn left sign to our request tonight? Yeah, you hate those. So without a deterrent, we're not gonna, I don't think we're gonna get the desired results, of which is 100%.
So, I've got a really stupid question. Do we have to have the 9th Street egress ingress? Because the B Street is not an issue at all from a traffic volume perspective. It's that clogging up right there on 9th Street because it's such a quick turn.
It's a good question, Mr. Short, and it's one I had last week.
And that's something we talked about internally, was if the planning commission and council approve this and we see a problem on 9th Street that's affecting traffic on the bridge or through that intersection, we would, if it's a safety issue, not allow at specific times the, use of that off of 9th.
So
There's a lot of things we don't allow, and they all happen, so.
My take on it would be, that's going to make the intersection,
What?
and I'm thinking out loud, so stick with me. The intersection is going to function, the B Street intersection is going to function more poorly if you remove a ride-in, ride-out capacity on 9th Street, because you're forcing anyone entering into 7 Brew to traverse through the intersection and to enter the site, whereas now, if it is queued, they can enter on a right turn, which isn't a movement that anyone would want to stop necessarily, and make it so if the concern is preventing those left turn movements, we can look at trying to create good channelization structurally, and I think that starts to limit the risk of the 9th Street exit at all. I think the right turn in, I know it's important to 7 Brew, but I think it's also important to the city because it allows traffic that is bound for 7 Brew, if the intersection is stopped, to get off of that queue without having to traverse.
So Kevin, just to be clear, you're suggesting that the entrance on the west is not an in and out, but it's only an in, and then once you get in, you have to exit to the north? Was that
what I'm hearing?
One way in, one way out?
If we could not have it at all. But what I'm hearing is that would.
Not have it at all?
Not have it at all.
Oh.
And just have one in and one out on B.
What about the compromise of it's only an in, and then everybody has to exit to the north?
Well, that's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
It's probably.
You can be candid with us.
Yeah.
If in your opinion, you
Well, I
think
think that's what he's
business
saying.
suffers or there's
I
a safety
think
issue,
so.
then we need to know
7
about it.
Brew was clear that they wanted the access, that it was
Okay.
important, but I'm telling you from just logically, I'm saying that you are forcing traffic to go through the intersection that otherwise wouldn't
I'm
do
hearing
that.
you. I mean, I think I don't want to, what my concern is the left-hand turn coming out. And then the queue gets blocked, and then we've got a disaster.
And what we can do is we can look at making it a structural modification, so doing a center median. It's slower traffic. Like I said, whenever we were going through the one on Elm, the big concern was, hey, you have to slow down to make that, so you were making it very generous and wide. And then like a safety impact, if you didn't know it was there and you came up and you hit it, That was a big concern for Quick Trip. I don't think we have those same concerns here because it's a much slower stop traffic anyways. So
Have you
we
seen
can
the
make
kids
that more
driving?
realistic. It's, in theory, it's a much slower stop traffic, and so I think we can get there. If that was functionally, if the queue isn't extending into the intersection, and there's not, if the afternoon peak was the level of service determinant for it, which I don't know in the original traffic study, do you remember, Chris? And presuming that it is, its school exit was the problem, assuming that it was, then you would be off peak, so the likelihood of 7 Brew impacting the level of service at the intersection is pretty low, provided the queue does not extend out of it. And we're happy to document through that and work through that.
I'm thinking, my guess is that we're gonna, did you call it a pork chop?
Pork chop.
I'm thinking there's pork
There's
chops in
very
our future, or at least one. You know, and I say this, it's not a reflection of enforcement, but I don't know why, but in our city, we can say we can't do this and it gets done. It gets done anyway. We're not supposed to have political signs out, and they're all over the place this morning and last night. Most people, either one, don't pay attention or they just don't care. And even at Quick Trip, I'm guilty myself. You're looking at that lane, you're late, you don't want to be over there. You're looking at this one, you're only supposed to turn right. You look around, it looks safe, you hook it hard, and you get back in, you turn left anyway. The problem is on Peoria Elm, that seems reasonably safe. It's a big, wide road. Here, I want this to succeed, and it will, but I project it's going to be, my prediction is it's going to be worse than we're all thinking. And we're not here to stop progress because traffic's going to get worse. We all know that. But we want to do everything we can to mitigate it, and at the end of the day, say that we studied the heck out of it as best we could. So I would say that you can work with Mr. Cloyd and Mr. Shrout to figure out what the metrics are of a study, and I'm convinced we will be satisfied if he's satisfied. I think the focus would need to be the intersection of Main and, well, the bottom, what is, yeah, Main and, yeah, you know, yeah, I mean the obvious ones, and maybe we can even talk about that after gone, but.
And it's just, to be very clear, we're okay with that.
Okay.
We just want to make sure that we know where we're going.
Yeah.
That's the only ask.
Yeah,
Just give
we're
us
not
clear
going
direction.
to move the goalpost on you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, bless you. Great. Any more questions or comments for Mr. Betchen? All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank
Is there, yes? I hear, okay, thank you. What number is this? 6. Anyone from the public like to make a comment on Jenks zoning 23 PUD, coffee shop, smoothie shop? Very well, thank you. The floor is closed on item number 6. So my recommendation to the council is if we want to approve this, and I think that's where we're heading, that we include the motion that city staff come back as soon as reasonably possible with a traffic impact analysis study that they all agree provides us the cover and safety and protections that we've asked for, and that the applicant include a physical, structural means of forcing or at least deterring traffic from turning left out of that primary ingress that they have there. Sound fair? All right. Knock yourselves out.
Oh, you want me to repeat all of that?
You can say it however you like, just as
Okay.
long as it's clear. I think it's clear. I think staff knows where we're at. Yes, she's giving you a smile, so you can say whatever.
So I move to approve item 6 of ordinance 1608 with the inclusion of the traffic study impact that needs to be processed with our staff. Is that good enough? I mean, I could go on. As stated by the mayor.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you all very much.
I can second myself.
We have a proper motion and a second to approve item 6, which is JZ 23 PUD with 2 notable exceptions, return of a traffic impact analysis and the commitment from the applicant to provide some sort of structural deterrents for left-hand turns out of that west exit. Thank you very much. Let's vote, please.
OJ,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
Box.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Betchen. And we are going to pull item number 7, the emergency clause. We're moving on to item 8, which is the final plat. Mrs. Hilton, are you coming back, or were you good? We are good. Would anyone like to motion for approval on item number 8?
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you both. Let's vote, please.
OJ,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
Box.
Yes, thank you. Item number 9 is ordinance number 1606, amending ordinance Chapter 7, Finance and Business, Article 2, Purchases and Sales of Supplies, Materials, Equipment, etc., adding Section 72-8, delegating limited authority to approve change orders to the city manager, providing for severability, repealing all ordinances or parts thereof in conflict herewith, and declaring an emergency. Good evening, Mr. Cloyd, and we are on page 123, if you'd like to follow along.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, staff. The proposed ordinance amends Chapter 7, Article 2 of the City Code by adding a section to delegate limited authority to approve change orders to the city manager. The purpose of this change is to provide timely approval of change orders for projects to avoid delaying schedule completion of that project. That's the primary purpose behind this. After researching what could be done, it was discovered that there is a state statute that allows governing bodies to delegate authority of change orders. So this ordinance aligns with the state statute, and it proposes this the following: authorizing the city manager to approve change orders up to $40,000 or 10% of any contract, whichever is less. It also requires all change orders approved by the city manager to be reported to the city council or the other governing body at the next regularly scheduled meeting. And it applies only to contracts which are subject to the Public Competitive Bidding Act. So staff recommends approval of this ordinance. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you, Mr. Cloyd. Any questions, Donna? Gentlemen? So is this just an extension from 25 to 40? Anything else? Weren't we at 25 before?
Yeah, but even with the 25, we felt that we needed to bring any change order,
Okay.
even if it was very small, to the council. And so when Teresa and Mr. Cloyd looked at what the state statute was and how we could clarify our ordinances, this is what they came up, well, what the state statute is.
Okay. Is the reporting done in the consent agenda, you think, or where are we going to?
Yeah, I would think that it would
Okay.
just be,
All right.
show that it was approved and put it in
Okay.
the consent agenda for review.
All right. Great, thank you. All right, very well. If there's no further questions from council on item
Yes.
number 9, Mr. Murray.
Oh, were you gonna, what is considered another appropriate governing body?
JPWA, for example.
Okay.
JAA, so like if it's a JPWA.
If it's for those appropriate deals, then that's the other. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Murray, would you like to consider a motion for item 9?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Thank you both. We have a proper motion and a second. Let's vote, please.
OJ,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
Box.
Yes, thank you. Item 10 is pulled. Item 11, ordinance number 1607, amending City Code Sections 7-2-4 and 7-2-5 regarding competitive bidding and declaring an emergency. Mrs. Nolan, we are on page 126. Good evening.
Good evening. Ordinance 1607 is really an update and a cleanup of our city competitive bidding ordinances that are found in section 7-2-4 and 7-2-5. The changes to 7-2-4 are really to get rid of a couple of phrases or sentences that are not utilized. The first one, we don't usually publish by notification for these kinds of bids. These are generally smaller repair, maintenance, construction projects that fall below that Public Competitive Bidding Act threshold. So they follow our city ordinance for those. Sometimes it's the city buying goods or services that aren't professional services, but the most common is this repair and maintenance type contracts or very, very small construction projects. So we've never used that publication. We suggest just getting rid of it. It has some ambiguous language. And we are also recommending getting rid of the requirement for a sealed bid. That's something that's done with the Public Competitive Bidding Act that are very formal quotes, that are very competitive, they're larger contracts. When we use this process, the idea really is to be quicker, more informal. So usually the city engineer or one of the engineers or sometimes the public works director send out specifications, what we're looking for. We get responses back by email and they compare the quotes and go for the best quote and document that. The formal bid opening really doesn't add value and it's not something that has sometimes not been followed. So we'd like to eliminate that. The other is updating the amounts that are in 725 to reflect state statute changes. Public Competitive Bidding Act has changed to 100,000 for a threshold instead of, it was 75 and our ordinance still says 50. These are old ordinances, they haven't been changed. Also to change the emergency authority of the city manager to waive competitive bidding. That statute has also changed from 75 to 150. And while we were doing that, I thought it would make sense to update number 10 because, as you know, council generally approves contracts over 25,000 and we competitively bid that. In an emergency, to only give you authority to waive competitive bidding up to 35 seems like a lot for not much benefit at all. So 50,000, especially in light of the increases in the statutes, 50 seems to make more sense. So that's what these changes are.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Nolan. Any questions for Teresa?
No.
Very well. Looks like we can entertain a motion on item.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Great. Thank you.
Second.
Very well. Have a proper motion, a second, to approve ordinance 1607, item 11. Let's vote, please.
OJ,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
Box.
Yes, thank you. Item 12, the emergency clause will pull. Moving on to item 13. Item 13 is a presentation relating to City of Jenks Tax Increment District Number 1 project plan from the City of Jenks Tax Increment District Number 2 project plan and the proposed Jenks River Entertainment District Economic Development Project Plan. If you have one, we are on page 132 if you'd like to follow along.
Is there a mouse on the
No.
Good evening, sir. Welcome back. For those that you haven't met, give us your name and.
Yes, good evening. Nate Ellis, Public Finance Law Group. We are nearing the end of the process that we began back in September relative to the creation of some increment districts and consequentially the amendment or termination of a couple of other increment districts. So we've got a presentation. Those of you who have heard it before, it can be somewhat lengthy. I'm going to try to race through it as fast as I possibly can, but certainly if you have any questions, you have on the agenda following this 3 public hearings that I would suggest, since they're all related to each other, you could open all 3 of the public hearings at the same time and accept comments. And then you have on the agenda 3 ordinances. However, we would like to defer that until the 21st meeting, consideration of those, primarily because we're still waiting on getting the formal legal description boundaries for the outsides of the increment districts. We have all the parcels identified and that's in the project plan, but we just don't have an outside boundary that comprises many, many parcels in some cases. So, first off, this is a TIF district. I think most of you are fairly familiar with TIF districts, but basically it's a statutory economic development tool that allows a city to capture the incremental new tax revenue that results from development. And that development is done primarily because you put a TIF in place which spurs the development to happen. It's not going to happen on its own without the TIF district being in place. So, in advance. And then go one more. Yeah. Okay, let's see how I do here. Okay, so to conceive what a TIF district really does, you have an existing tax base, whether it's the ad valorem taxes that are captured or the sales tax that's generated from property. That's an existing tax base. The TIF does not capture that. It is put in place, development occurs, and there's an increment above that base that's generated. That's what the TIF actually captures. Those revenues are basically invested back into the project to pay for various project costs that have been identified. And then at the end of the TIF district, you have an enhanced tax base, and at that point, all of those tax revenues continue to flow to the taxing jurisdictions as the base does all throughout the TIF district. The process, we determine the eligibility. In this case, we've got a couple of TIF districts that are with enterprise areas that are designated by the federal and state government. Third is in a reinvestment area, but in all cases, they qualify under the TIF statutes to be designated for TIFs. We develop a project plan, which could be up to 25 years and capture up to 100% of the local tax revenues. And then we created a statutory TIF review committee that actually examined numbers and the project plan in quite detail, as did the Planning Commission. So I mentioned the review committee. There's members of each of the ad valorem taxing jurisdictions that are on that committee. Also the City and Planning Commission had representatives, and then were 3 at-large representatives from the community that were part of that. They ultimately made a recommendation to go ahead and approve, as has been presented, the amendment of Increment District 1, the termination of Increment District number 2, and the creation of 3 new increment districts that we've called A, B, and C at this point. The project plan was also reviewed by the Planning Commission. They similarly made a unanimous recommendation on the 23rd of February. We held the first public hearing on the 23rd, and moments from now we'll have the second public hearing. And then after all those steps have completed, then the city can consider its TIF ordinance to actually put the TIF in place. So the proposed amendment of Increment District number 1 was established in 2007. In both of these cases, essentially, Increment District 1 has seen some fairly significant development, but a portion of the area overlies part of the aquarium campus, and that area outside of the waterfront grill hasn't developed. And so it's the point that the infrastructure needs to have full development of that area are such that the existing TIF district simply won't support the development. There's not going to be enough revenue generated in a short period of time to be able to support that. Similarly with Increment District 2, it was originally created in 2007. As you know, there was nothing there for a long time. Then there was part of a steel structure that went up, and then the pandemic hit, and everything stopped. And really not until about the last month or so has anything even happened out there. So again, the rationale there is that there's extensive development and several projects that correlate to each other and provide a synergy. And so the idea is we modify those districts so that we can create new districts that allow for a full-time horizon to maximize the development potential of the property. So what's proposed for Increment District number 1, you see the existing boundaries here on the left, and you see the aquarium campus here. And of course the aquarium's right there. You have a hotel that predated the TIF district, and so was never in the TIF district. You have the waterfront grill. You have the proposed amended boundaries that carves everything out except for waterfront grill would stay in the existing TIF 1. So any questions on TIF 1? But that's essentially what's been proposed and recommended to the council. As I mentioned, same thing on TIF district number 2. You've got the area that's immediately south of the turnpike. Here's Elm Avenue, Polecat Creek, the river, and then the south side of the turnpike. Again, there really hasn't been any meaningful development yet at this point. So what's recommended is that it would terminate this district, and you'll see in a minute here that the boundaries of what we call TIF A are approximately the same as this. So anything on TIF 2? Okay. So the 3 increment districts that are proposed new, A is the retail outlet project, and so that's the south side of the turnpike there that I just showed. B is the Aquarium Town Center project, and so that would be essentially the aquarium district in its entirety. And then C is we call the Sports Experience Project, and we'll talk about here in a minute. And it's an area that's basically on the south side of Polecat Creek, right across from what it would be TIF A. So the original terms would be 25 years maximum from their commencement date. The city would create by ordinance the TIF district, but we would defer establishing the commencement date. That would probably happen sometime within the next 8 to 10 months, but then once that date by resolution is established, then there would be a 25-year time period for that. It would capture 100% of the new ad valorem sales and hotel tax that is captured out there. So the baseline taxes that are currently generated would not be captured at all. 75% of the new tax would be apportioned to project costs, and the other 25% would be apportioned back to the Jenks public schools. And that was really kind of a concept that, this sort of project ultimately has the greatest impact on the school district from a revenue standpoint. And so the Committee and Planning Commission made their recommendations that all of that revenue that goes back would actually go to the school district. And again, the other jurisdictions were agreeable to that. 56.34% of the sales and use tax would be apportioned to project costs. If that sounds like a random number, that represents 2 cents of your 3.55 cents that you currently have. The remainder would then be retained by the city and just utilized as you normally would, under each ordinance. 100% of any hotel tax that's generated would be apportioned to project costs. And then we have the Oklahoma Local Development and Enterprise Zone Incentive Leverage Act. Without getting into a lot of detail, when you have basically a tourist attraction, especially like the aquarium already is and these other projects are projected to be, the state offers an incentive where they will actually share a portion of their sales tax to the extent that it can be proven that it's new dollars to the state. So these are basically outside the state dollars that are flowing into the state. And so the Commerce Department does a calculation to determine what that is, but that's matching funds that matches up to the 2% that's contributed at the city local level. So if the city doesn't contribute the local sales tax, the matching funds can't, or the state would only match what the city puts into a TIF district. So the retail outlet project, Increment District A, is about a 340,000 square foot premium outlets, estimated about $100 million. Again, I've said this several times. We think it'll be way more than that because that's a bit of a pre-inflation number. But that's okay because that's, the larger the value, the larger the ad valorem tax revenue stream is going to be. Estimated about $115 million in annual taxable sales. And you see the revenue projections there that we'll talk about in summary in a minute. And then there's opportunity for significant development within the increment area beyond this. The primary project, that's the retail outlet, is here right immediately on the south side, again, where you've seen the steel structures. If you've driven by on the turnpike, you know where that is. But this is the proposed area for development. Kind of a conceptual site plan as it relates to the turnpike, and of course the aquarium district is right here. And then there's some conceptual views. And then the actual boundaries would follow approximately the same area. These boundaries are a little more closely, they're closely aligned to the actual property boundaries. There was some splitting of properties on the previous version. So TIF B is to create a vibrant, walkable, mixed-use destination that enhances the Oklahoma Aquarium campus. Expecting a mix of retail and dining establishments, entertainment venues, various attractions, mixed use, that would really allow for full build-out of the aquarium campus. You see the revenue projections. And then, so this map north is over on the left side. The river, of course, is on the east side of the campus. But you see the aquarium continues to be the center point, but then you see significant development along Aquarium Drive in this area. and then also development that could potentially occur. This is all the product of the Dover Coal report that was commissioned by the city to look at the development potential. And of course, one of the big concepts in there is the low water dam that would be at approximately 106th Street that would allow for, the mayor told me that we will soon be referring to this as a lake instead of a river. And so there's opportunity for a lot of waterfront development and water sports, things like that. So some conceptual renderings that were part of the Dover Coal report. It's kind of like your parents' slideshow. And then one of the proposed concepts is a hotel that would basically anchor I guess that would be the southwest corner near the roundabout. That would be kind of an entryway into the aquarium district. And so then you see the proposed boundaries of this. And again, we're picking up the area that's been carved out of TIF 1, but then we're also adding in this backside where we've got this riverfront property that becomes potentially very usable if you've got a water feature with the dam there. And then the sports experience project is to create a regional draw sports park. Have some retail, dining, family entertainment center, hotel on property, and then you see the revenues that are projected based on that. And then this is a conceptual rendering. Sorry, I don't think I can fit it all on one screen, but you've got various configurations of ball fields. We've got two different versions of this. As you see, I mean, what would actually be, there's probably going to be a third different version, but look, something akin to this. But you see there's a hotel, food and retail, family entertainment, and athletic center. And then one of the things that's important about this project, most of this is floodway or floodplain. And what's proposed for the ballparks could actually be in the floodplain. And they would be designed so that if there is a high water event, water could just basically flow over the fields, and then once it clears, and then dirt would be used to build up these areas where you actually have the structures. So this allows use of property that otherwise there's just really no way to put it in service. This is really the only viable use for it anyways. And again, creates a major attraction for the city. And so the proposed boundaries of increment C, the renderings you saw basically took up most of this space. This parcel right here is currently owned by the PWA. That would be part of it. And then it's conceived that this might potentially, it's a horse farm, I think, right now, that use might potentially be changed and be additional development that's connected with this project. So. And then you see here the project area boundaries, and we've just got a larger project area that we've defined. Various improvements would occur within that area, but you see the three different TIF districts, C and A and B up here, and how they're, the connectivity that is potentially there between the three. You know, people coming into town to go to the ballparks, and in between games, they're going to go over here and shop, or they're going to come up here and go to the aquarium or eat at various restaurants wherever. And so there's a significant amount of infrastructure needs, be able to get across the creek here, and just all the, moving dirt around and all the things that need to be done. So, but there's a great opportunity, and why these are really processed together is that these projects really build and support each other. People coming in for the aquarium have other things to do as well. So there's multiple reasons for people to come here, stay here, and spend a lot of money while they're here. The identified project costs, we've identified nearly $300 million in total infrastructure costs, which we all recognize is a very large number, and it's not something that Jenks can go out and do tomorrow. But those will be broken off in chunks as specific projects move forward, and as development is going to generate revenues to help support them. And there may be other funding sources to help supplement some of these projects as well. But The TIF itself, or the TIFs in aggregate, would authorize the expenditure of up to that amount for those various projects from TIF revenues. In aggregate, again, about $125 million in TIF ad valorem revenues, about $145 million in sales tax TIF revenues. You know, there's 112 that would come back to the city, 27 million to the county, and the state would be generating about 327 million in sales tax, about 6.5 million of tax revenues from the hotel tax. So all totaled, based on preliminary and relatively conservative projections that aren't necessarily full development of all of the property, it's projected that you could have on the order of about 277 million in total TIF revenues. Again, recognize that's a number that's lower than the authorized project costs, but ideally we see more maximal development and be able to generate additional revenues beyond that as well. City's got oversight of the TIF district. They'll approve public agreements with developers as appropriate. Again, when you adopt the TIF district, you don't spend $300 million. You authorize the framework to capture and spend those project dollars, but then for specific projects, specific developments, there will be agreements or contracts that come back before this body for further approval. Some of the projects or some of the infrastructure may be done by developers. The city may want to outsource and have them do it just because it's more efficient to do that. Other projects the city will undertake on their own. Of course, those contracts will be subject to competitive bidding. We talked about, with the review committee, impacts on the taxing entities. You know, the biggest impact is probably Jenks Public Schools. And so, you know, that ad valorem, 120 some odd million, 31 of that is coming back to the school district. So that represents a significant windfall money source because those dollars are actually outside of their school funding formula. So it actually benefits them more than if there wasn't a TIF district and the same revenues were generated. Certainly, destination experiences attract increased visitors to the city. That's really the purpose behind this. And so those visitors are going to be spending additional monies, so it's going to generate additional tax revenues. And then also it's going to impact on businesses. You have more people coming into your community. They're going to be looking around at different things. So it certainly is going to provide additional opportunities for businesses that are within the community outside the TIF district as well. Then our process, as I mentioned, the review committee has recommended the amendment of TIF 1, the termination of TIF 2, and the creation of these 3 new TIF districts, A, B, and C. We held the first public hearing. The Planning Commission also recommended their approval of the 3. We're holding the second public hearing tonight. Again, as I mentioned, we'll defer the consideration of the ordinances for 2 weeks to the meeting on the 21st is the recommendation. So that's the presentation. As I mentioned, if you'd like to open all 3 public hearings at once, I think you could do that, and that way anybody that wants to speak can speak to any or all of them at the same time.
Great. Thank you, Nate. Any questions from council for Nate while we have him here? All right. Thank you, sir. Then we are finished with item 13. We're going to move on to item 14, which is a, yeah. On the presentation. No, but close. Yeah, you get, yep, absolutely. That was just a presentation, so we'll move on. So we're going to do, for the staff's recommendation, we're going to do the public hearing on District 1, District 2, and District 3 all at one particular point. So if you guys, if you're a member of the public and you'd like to comment on any one of these, we'll go ahead and do that now. So essentially, we are moving on to item number 14, a public hearing for increment district number 1. So if you have anything you'd like to say to the council, address the council as a whole for any of these projects, you are welcome to come forward. And you guys know the drill: name, address, and then we'll hear you out.
And Mayor, to clarify, so
Yeah.
we are taking up item
14, 15, and 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Name is Steve Eaton, live at 307 East 111th. Sorry about jumping the gun. I thought you was going to pass me up.
Never. Why would we do that?
I don't know who's running the slideshow. Can you turn to page 162? Yeah. You can see on the TIF, now, I don't care if it goes one in or out, or I'm for it or against it. And I'm not sure it matters why I was left out. I got my handy dandy point. I won't hit you now. You see this square right here? That's part of my property. And it's the same elevation land-wise as this that's included in the TIF, and as this that's included in the TIF, and all this that goes back what I call the old alpaca farm, and the front of our property that goes down to the, I gotta hold it still there. It goes down the front of down Elm to 111th Street. And it was left out. Does it matter? Well, it kind of does matter because I kind of feel discriminated against, maybe, is a politically incorrect word, but it allows a developer, if he's got a choice to do this that's included in the TIF or this without the TIF, it gives my property a little bit of disadvantage. So all I'm asking is that I be included in this TIF. I don't know if it's too late, and I think maybe you're in negotiation. I don't know. I've kind of heard word that you're talking about it. I would just ask that I be included in this TIF because it is the same elevation. Not sure why I was left out. Maybe if I knew the true answer, I'd probably just get mad about it. So I don't know.
And so Steve, the areas that are within the TIF district are areas where we have had either the owner or some other entity coming to us saying they want to develop that area, and that the only way they can develop it, because specifically the green area is within the floodway or floodplain, and we didn't have any development contacts with you or with anyone that was interested in doing something on those properties at this time. So the benefit, though, that you do have, even if your property is not in the green portion of that TIF, is it is within the project area. So TIF funds can still be used on your property because it's within the project area. So whatever's generated in the green, yellow, and blue can be used within the entire red square.
Well, that makes a little more sense if
Yeah.
that can be used.
So the goal was,
So why don't you make the whole everything in the red square TIF area? Is that basically what you did? Is what you're saying?
no, because the increment area, the existing TIF 1, which is the railroad tracks to the turnpike south and to, I believe, B Street on the north, and all the way over the levee towards the aquarium, that's an existing TIF. And so we didn't want to create one huge TIF, because we think that we can get the funding necessary for some of these public infrastructure projects from what is shown on those, the green, yellow, and blue.
Okay, so if my property those funds can be used for development or whatever, is there more of an advantage to have it in the green area as not?
The advantage would be, I'm guessing that your property, let's say, call it 40 acres, that's along Polecat Creek, I'm sure it's valued extremely low right now because it's in the floodway, right? I mean, the assessed value is low. So if someone were to come in and do something on your property, then we could capture that incremental revenue to help fund some infrastructure on your property, but we can still do that all the same, even if it's not within the green area.
Right, I understand, but all that green area is in the floodway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've had many conversations with developers about what I'll call the ranch property that's west of Elm Street, and the property, the 50 acres immediately south of Polecat, and then the 40 acres that the JPWA owns. So, I mean, if we had had conversations with someone about developing your property, we probably would have considered it. And, we've talked to Nate about this, about the possibility of, could we add, if we had development interest in whether it's along Elm going south on your property or west of or not west, east of the JPWA property, I think not at this time, but at a later time, we would potentially entertain, if we thought it necessary, to put it within the TIF because we didn't have the funding from these existing 3 TIFs. The benefit we have is we can use the TIF funds generated in the green, yellow, and blue, again, anywhere within the red square.
Okay, so I'm not at a disadvantage for any developer or anything like that?
I wouldn't think so, no. So if there's infrastructure improve.
You wouldn't think so, or that's a yes or no?
Well, I mean, everything depends on when is your property going to be developed? How much of the TIF funds have already been used? It's really when I say it depends, it all depends on who comes in and does what and is basically building the infrastructure and claiming the share of the total TIF amount.
Okay. And the best use for this ball field or something like that, it's a flood zone, so. As of 2 days ago, nobody's interested. As of yesterday, there's a maybe. Phillips,
And
I would be helping him out. Of course, the city wants the road, eventually. So,
But see, a developer could still come in, do improvements on your property, and request reimbursement through the TIF process.
right, okay. Just as long as I'm not left out, as long as I'm in the red.
Yeah.
It makes me feel a little better
Steve,
about it, so.
You ever recall, maybe back when you were in high school, when you just didn't know she was interested, so you never asked her out? Did it ever happen to you? Did you ever have a girl, you never asked her out because you just never knew she was interested, and you just sat there thinking, oh, I never knew you had an interest, you never came and talked to me?
Is this a personal story you're getting into here or something?
Just kind of.
Is this, I think some money has changed.
Here's another parable. Here's another example. You ever quit getting invited to a party because you didn't go the first 5 times? No. I like the first one better. In this case, what I will say to you is the process of getting to where we are now with all those taxing entities, getting them to come here and agree on one date is extremely difficult.
Well, it wouldn't have been so bad if it had been asked to begin with.
I think let's be candid with each other, I think maybe we just assumed there might not be some interest, and that's a bad assumption because she got married to someone else.
But Steve, we didn't ask everybody in this every single property owner in the red square if we.
The interest has been for years and years and years, and I'm not, I hope you can appreciate that. But here's the good news, the process, there is no way we can get those taxing entities to come back and start that process over. We do have, there is a method in which your property could benefit in the future, and there's also a method in the future potentially where we could introduce an amendment.
Well, it might be the real soon future. That's what I'm getting at.
I don't know, but right now that giant ship has pulled into the tiny harbor, and there's no way for it to turn around, and it's extremely hard to get Tulsa County, the health department, and all those people to come back and say, we have somebody else who's this for? Who's showed up, and we want to, that's like getting KISS to come back and do another 50th anniversary reunion tour. They've already done it. They're not going to do it again.
I get that, but, once again, maybe I should have been asked a long time ago.
Yeah, we won't make that mistake again, Mr. Eden.
I got one shot at this.
Yeah.
You're covered.
I'm covered.
Yeah.
Everybody hear that? Am I covered, Don?
If you're not covered, and somebody wants to do something amazing on that property, and we're out of, we can't make it work without it, we'll get it amended.
What ward is that? Is that Ward 1 now? It's
No.
the new Ward 1?
No,
Is it 5? Oh, is it? Even with the new
I
map?
got somebody that cares for me.
Yeah. Well, here's the good news. She's got 4 more years around here, so
That's good.
you
She
can,
cares.
yeah.
She
And
cares.
you know where I live, and you might
Yeah,
know
I
where
know
she
it.
lives.
I know it.
We, If you ask us to come to the party next time, we will not say no, but we just need to know.
Appreciate that. Next time I have a party, I'll make sure to invite you.
I appreciate you being in good spirits with us, Mr. Eaton.
Well, you know, it's coming. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You know, we've had this since 1949. It's been in the family. And everybody calls and wants something, you know, ONG, PSO, you know, the city, they all want something. They all want it for free. And, you know, I just kind of get tired of that.
Yeah.
And I see it's coming. I cannot blame Dwayne one bit. He got kind of dealt a raw hand with the property he's got, and he's doing the best he can with it, and I see that. I can see it. I don't blame him at all. I don't blame him, don't blame the city for expanding onto the old Shirley Evans property.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the best use for it.
Yeah.
It's just my neighbor. Now you're my neighbor.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, maybe it's time.
I got a good feeling the value of your dirt's going to go up in the next.
Well, depends on how much you're willing to pay for that road. I'm glad to hear you say that.
I'm always happy to let you have the last word,
I'm
Mr.
glad
Eaton.
to hear you say that. The value is way. All right.
Just want to make sure that Roni and Bandit have a place to lay down.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's their names?
Roni and Bandit, yeah.
Roni and Bandit. Yeah.
Roni?
Well, actually, Roni we had to put down.
Okay.
That was the
Oh.
one we had to put down. It's Mac and Bandit.
Oh, okay, I was thinking Max was when it was.
No, Mac's the yellow one and Bandit's the other one. Yeah, you did. Well, that's good. That's good you remembered that.
Well, I'm sorry you can get the full audience tonight. There's just the four of us here.
Oh, that's
but-
okay. That's
yeah.
okay. I got the people that count, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Eaton.
Thanks.
This is a public discussion. If anyone else would like to come forward and speak on behalf of items number 14, 15, or 16, you're welcome to do so. Good evening, Mrs. Montgomery. How are you tonight?
Thank you. Charlotte Montgomery, 10612 South Fort Avenue. I really want a cocktail, so I'm going to be quick. I had a question on the new TIF details. It was original terms of approximately 25 years from commencement date. I was confused. Does that mean it's 25 years from year 2023, which would be year 2048, or are you talking about 2031 and 2032? And then I had another question about land use. In the comprehensive plan, part of TIF A and all of TIF C land use is identified as parks and open space. Will the comp plan need to be amended, and if yes, what will be the new land use? And the last one I have is, I don't know if this, you're not writing them down this time.
Have you not
At
met
the
her?
planning committee,
You don't know
he
who
was-
this is? Nate? You met your match, brother. I'm going to give Nate the night off. Let Chris take number one.
So my first question was about the date, the second one was about land use, and the last one is about the southwest corner of 106th and Elm, which will be part of the Ripken Sports Experience Complex. That property at that corner was location of the Hickory Creek Offsite Mitigation Area. That site was set aside for a public park with trails and the like as the result of the settlement agreement involving the unintended development of the wetland site near 111th and Elwood. What will happen to this site? Can it be developed as a TIF? And if no, doesn't a donut hole have to be carved out of the TIF C map for that site if it's going to remain there? So those are my three questions.
Well, go ahead.
Can I start with?
Number one.
Oh, can I start with number 3?
The donut hole?
Yes.
The donut
Yeah,
So
sure.
I have fresh, the area that was set aside for mitigation from the Hickory Creek situation with the Corps, that is going to remain in what I'll call a conservation easement. So that will not be developed. I think it's close to 11 acres. We've had conversations with the Corps and offered more land somewhere else, but for whatever reason, they have their reasons. They want to keep that easement, conservation easement, on that property. And so it will remain in the easement. We can still have the TIF overlapping that, that's fine, it just won't be developed.
Is that the 11 acres that you had deeded back to you from the JPWA meeting 2 weeks ago, where, you know, it was a total of like almost 40 acres and 11 got carved back to you. Is that property?
Yes.
Okay.
And question 2 was the land use. I believe that Marseille has a plan for if there's an application for the ball field use, because I think right now the majority of that land is ag, and I understand that on the comp plan it does show open space and park space. And I think on the comp plan, the vast majority of all floodway is just listed as open
Yes,
space because we
that's
didn't
correct.
have a way to utilize that land. So I would think that the comp plan would be amended at the time of the change of the zoning.
Okay. The year.
The year, if the council approves these ordinances on the 21st, they still have, I believe, up to 10 years to actually start the clock. So that will be made through a separate meeting item where they will actually start the clock on each of these 3 TIF areas. So it may be, you know, in May, it may be in a year, it may be in 5 years, but that will start the clock.
But it's 25-year term. Okay.
I think
That's all
it'd
I
be
have.
really
Thank
cool
you.
too. We have a big clock starting ceremony. We get one of those big clocks. We hit the button, all 7 hands, and there'll be no doubt that the clock has started, because there's so many clocks that have started and run out of batteries, we can't keep track anymore. So,
Okay.
are you good? Good, satisfied?
I'm good. You
Great.
didn't have to write anything down.
Thank you. You should probably get to know her. She's gonna keep you on your toes. Good evening, sir.
We'll stay in the same household.
Who might you be?
Keith Montgomery, 10612 South Fur, Jenks. I had raised this with Chris earlier. When going through the documents, there's a reference called the Jenks River Entertainment District Economic Development Project Plan, which is referenced 4 times in the document. It's also referenced in 610 and 612 as that. Now, as I understand, what you're really seeking to approve is the TIFs. That's great. Don't really have an issue with that. But to call something a development project plan seems to indicate that there's something other than a TIF. You're developing the area. And so I just think you need to look at that terminology, because I would sure hate to have a discussion a year from now and somebody say, oh, well, we approved the project development plan, here it is. Well, no, you approved the TIFs. And I don't think there's any intent to do anything other than that, but it's just the terminology, when you look through the document, is not very clear. So that was all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery.
So the document that would be adopted by the ordinance is the Jenks River Entertainment District Economic Development Project Plan. This the Economic Development Project Plan is terminology. We call it project plan for short often, but that's the document that would actually be approved and adopted by ordinance, I think it's 612, the last one that creates the 3 districts. That document is a framework that outlines what revenues are going to be captured, for how long, how those revenues are going to be used. And so it creates the framework for the TIF structure. But then again, as I mentioned, as individual projects or individual developments come forward, those would be subjects of various development agreements or contracts that the city would consider at that time. If a developer is going to do A, B, and C, and the city is going to construct or cause to be construct these 3 or 4 infrastructure projects in support of it. So again, the project plan is the basic framework or structure of the entire development, but there will be specific agreements that come forward for further consideration at the appropriate time.
Oh, thank you, sir. Crystal clear?
Well, thank you. I wanted to get it clearly.
Yeah. I can see your point how a project plan, in my mind, I start seeing, and I think things, buildings.
I've been in business world too long.
I live with a project manager, so, yeah.
And the project plan is a statutory term.
Yeah,
So
okay.
the statute says you must generate a project plan, and then the city adopts that project plan by ordinance to create a TIF district. And the statute also says there are economic development agreements that are entered with the appropriate parties to implement the project plan.
Okay. Very well. Thank you, sir. Would anyone else from the public like to comment on items 14, 15, or 16? Any of these project plans for districts 1, 2, or 3? All right, very well. We will close the floor to public comment. And we have made the decision to we're going to defer the vote on these ordinances, which is items 17 through 22, to the next city council meeting. Everyone on council okay with that? All right, very well. So if that's the case, then we are now through.
Mayor, just for the sake of formality and
Yeah.
clarity, do you all want the vote to continue it to the next meeting?
If you think it's appropriate, yeah. Very well. Would someone like to make a motion that we defer items 17 through 22 to the next regularly scheduled council meeting?
Do I need to read each item?
No.
Okay. So I recommend we defer items 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22 until our next council meeting, which is on March 21st. Is that correct?
Yeah. Can you use the word motion in your statement, please?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll see. I'll make a motion to move items 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22 to our next council meeting on March 21st.
Great, thank you very much.
Second that.
All right, thank you all. We have a proper motion and a second on deferring items 17 through 22. Let's vote, please.
OJ,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
Box.
Yes, thank you. Moving on to other business. Mr. Shrout, City Manager's report.
Mayor and members of council, I don't have a formal report for you tonight. We have the Jenks Chamber Luncheon tomorrow with the Tulsa Chamber's Senior Vice President of Tourism, Renee McKinney. She'll be speaking. I went to the Capitol yesterday afternoon and came back this afternoon. The Tulsa Chamber had their One Voice legislative event that they have annually, and we met with legislators, members of the Jenks Chamber, and the aquarium went. I think it was a good event, and that's all I have for now. I will be out of town for spring break this coming Saturday through Wednesday, so I'll be coming back next Wednesday.
Oh, great, thank you. Let's go ahead and skip committee and mayor's report this evening unless anyone from the council has any last-minute words they'd like to share. Anyone? All right, very well. If that's the case, well, let's make a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you. Let's vote, please.
OJ,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
Box.
Yes, thank you. We're going to move on. This will be quick. Moving on to the regular scheduled meeting of the Jenks Public Works Authority. Let's call to order, please.
OJ,
Here.
Lynn, Isbell, Murray,
Here.
Klein, Short,
Here.
Box.
Here, thank you. Item number 1 is our consent, consideration of appropriate action on our consent agenda. Would anyone like to?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Thank you both very much. We have a proper motion and a second to approve item 1. Let's vote, please.
OJ,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Short,
Yes.
Box.
Yes, thank you. Item 2 will pull, and unless you, Mr. Strout, you have anything else?
No, sir.
Very well. The time is 8:24 p.m. We are adjourned. Have a good evening.